The following presentation is rated PG. Viewer discretion is advised.
Those are your hands?
It was an unforgettable fantasy from one of Hollywood's most imaginative directors. It was a daring movie breakthrough for a TV heartthrob out to shatter his image.
The character just had this profound, effect on me.
Hold me. I can't.
And it offered a movie swan song for a silver screen legend.
I have a present for you.
A cutting-edge filmmaker, a struggling star in the making, and a real-life Hollywood love affair. On Hollywood Backstories, Edward Scissorhands.
Hello? Avon calling. Why are you hiding back there? You don't have to hide from me. I'm Peg Boggs. I'm your local Avon representative, and I'm as harmless as cherry pie. I can see that I've disturbed you. How stupid of me. I'll just be going now.
Don't go.
What happened to you?
Released in 1990, Edward Scissorhands told the fantastic and touching tale of a kindly inventor's unfinished creation. A boy with scissors for hands who longs for acceptance from the hostile world around him.
What's your name?
Edward?
I think you should just come home with me.
The character is an outsider and is very different and feels very different from everyone else, but yearns to be understood. And I think that's the beauty of Edward Scissorhands.
Edward Scissorhands was the most personal film to date for director Tim Burton, a former Disney animator who based the character on his own teenage longings.
It first started out of just those very simple teenage impulses of the feeling of wanting to touch and wanting to communicate but not being able to.
As a teen in the early 1970s, Tim Burton was both fascinated and repelled by the cookie-cutter world of suburbia that surrounded him.
Tim grew up in Burbank, and that kind of homogeneity, the consistency of the houses looking the same, the weirdness of, going into your friend's house and it's the same house as your house. It's so formative for Tim.
He was a loner. He wore braces till he was, I think, 17, and he was like the odd man out. But he enjoyed it because he observed.
When he wasn't at the movies, enjoying the elegant villainy of his idol Vincent Price, Tim expressed himself through drawing. And among his sketches was the picture of a boy who summed up Tim's own sense of being different. In the years that followed, Burton used his imaginative gifts to launch himself as a filmmaker. And in 1986, he was introduced to a writer named Caroline Thompson, who shared his quirky sensibility.
I had written a really twisted little Gothic novel, and so we immediately realized we were kindred souls and knew we wanted to work together. Tim said, well, there is this drawing that I made in high school, and it's of this guy who's got scissors instead of hands. It was like the angels opened up. It was the stupidest image I had ever heard in my life, and it was the most brilliant image I had ever heard in my life. It was brilliant because it so clearly expressed how people feel.
Without even seeing the drawing, Thompson excitedly began work on a first draft, which drew from her own similar experiences in suburbia.
The movie started out as a musical in our minds. I wrote some hilarious lyrics. One of the favorite song was, I Can't Handle It. We were afraid that this sort of slight edge of surreality that we wanted to play with wouldn't be acceptable to people, and that if you did a musical, you could do anything. But when Tim read the first draft, he just immediately felt that it was going to work on its own.
By the time Thompson and Burton signed off on the script, Tim had agreed to make what was destined to be a mega-budget blockbuster, Batman. But for Burton, no project was more personal than Edward Scissorhands. And in 1989, thanks to the success of Batman, he and producer Denise DeNovi secured one of the most extraordinary studio deals of the day.
We would develop the script, and if they liked it, fine. If they didn't, fine. But we weren't going to go through the development process, making a film by committee.
I would turn the script in, and 1 week later, the studio had to say yes or no. And that was that.
In 1989, 20th Century Fox gave Burton and his team a green light and a budget of $20 million, even though the script was defiantly different from any other. The director knew that Edward Scissorhands' success depended on the actor who would play the title role.
Tom Cruise sniffed around it for a long time and was really into it, but got hung up on how does he go to the bathroom? Well, I didn't want to go there. Bill Hurt wanted to do it really badly. And Robert Downey Jr. I do remember, and actually I thought was a terrific idea.
But there was another candidate, Johnny Depp, the real-life boyfriend of Edward Scissorhands' leading lady, Winona Ryder. By 1989, the 26-year-old actor had achieved stardom on the TV teen hit 21 Jump Street. But Depp's heartthrob looks were deeply at odds with his sensitive and quirky personality.
The general public had been sold an image, which was a character that I played on television, and not anything like what that character was.
When Depp read Edward Scissorhands, he bonded instantly with the character, who was also totally misunderstood due to his appearance.
I'll never forget it. He walked in, he's very shy, and he kind of was looking around for us, and I just saw these eyes looking around, these big, gentle, doe eyes, and Tim and I just looked at each other like, that's him, you know?
That's my family. Now, come along, dear, and I'll show you the rest of the house.
Burton had found his movie alter ego. He had also scored a shrewd casting coup, pairing two real-life lovers in their first film together.
Winona was just 18. This was kind of really her first big romance, and it made it a more special experience for everybody, I think, because they were really falling in love.
We were both nervous before we started, but it's been going really well, and I think it's one of the best experiences I've ever had. It's exciting and scary, but that only makes you want to do a better job.
But audiences expecting a traditional love story were in for a shocking surprise. Like the character himself, Edward Scissorhands the movie was about to step out into a strange and sometimes dangerous new world.
See, I was hoping for something big and kind of bouffant, kind of like mine. Now, don't you worry, Kisses, you're going to be just fine, honey. You're going to be so pretty. Yes, you are. Oh. Oh, Eddie, is there anything you can't do? You take my very breath away, I swear. Look at this. Have you ever cut a woman's hair?
On March 26, 1990, director Tim Burton assembled his cast of rising stars and award-winning veterans like Alan Arkin and Diane Wiest for the first day of filming on Edward Scissorhands. It came after an intensive search for the perfect locale to film the story. Ultimately, Burton found his fantasy suburbia in a newly built community near Tampa, Florida.
About half the houses hadn't been sold yet. It was like having our own little back lot to shoot in.
Well, one thing in the movie that was inspired by shooting in Florida was the waterbed. When Tim went on a location scout, every house he went to had a waterbed.